Welcome to Monster Chats, presented by Monster VoIP, where we share the tools, methods, and best practices that business leaders use to build new connections, strengthen relationships, and impact sales in organizations of all shapes and sizes. If you have any questions that come up during today's episode, please text them to 424-378-6966. Please welcome the founder of Monster VoIP, your host, Colin Mitchell.
Today, we're going to be talking with Luz Marina Lopez. I'm Colin Mitchell, the host of Monster Chats and the founder of Monster VoIP. Luz Marina Lopez is a mental health professional with her own private practice. She doesn't use traditional counseling approaches where people have to work on feeling better. Rather, she causes a shift in how the mind processes information so that they can experience relief from the inside out. Welcome to Monster Chats. Luz, how are you doing?
I'm good, Colin. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your story, something about yourself and how you got into this field.
Sure. I actually was in the corporate world for many, many years while I put myself through college. And I started working with substance abuse field and in working in community agencies, nonprofits, clinics, things like that. And I just saw a need for something different. I noticed a lot of people were trying to force change to where they were working on themselves and going through these long, painful processes. And when I looked at how the brain functioned, I realized that that wasn't exactly the best approach if you're wanting to make a change. So through that, I ended up finding a modality that actually addresses that and causes a natural shift in a person's mind so that they can change, because people feel horrible but they don't know how to feel better, and working on it doesn't always make that difference. So instead, I decided I had to open up my own practice in order to offer this very unique approach, and I'm actually seeing lives transform from it. So that's a little bit of how this process begun for me. Just saw a lot of people in pain and not getting a whole lot of healing, and I just decided I needed to make a difference with that.
Awesome. That's, very inspiring, right? To see that like there's a problem and people are really just trying to, it sounds like, you saw that people were really just trying to address it in this same way and to try to do something different, right? That takes a lot of courage.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So today we're going to be discussing some practical things that you can do to cope during this very difficult time of the pandemic. And we're also going to talk to how to set boundaries to keep emotionally and mentally healthy. And then we're going to talk about how to promote lasting change. So tell us, what can people do during this very different, very time where we're all, people are isolated, and what are some things that we can do?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because we see so much about just be positive, just be okay, but the reality is people are losing their jobs. People are trying to juggle being parents and being online teachers and all these many different hats that don't come natural to them, because they're having to immerse themselves in this whole new world almost, all while being stuck at home. So it's kind of hard to be positive sometimes under those circumstances. But at the same time, this is such an opportunity for innovation. And some of the best ideas and the greatest inventions happen from situations like these, because they force us to think outside of the box. So one way that we could apply some of that in our current situation is think outside the box. I'm seeing people, the other day I saw a guy on a skateboard with a broomstick trying to like paddleboard down the street to keep his balance going. And I was like, man, that's pretty innovative. It's kind of like a new sport. I had never seen him do that before. People are rollerblading nowadays. I actually bought a pair of rollerblades myself. I'm like, well, let me try something different. People are cooking new meals or having interesting activities with their kids to where they're teaching them how to write in cursive, all these different ways to stay, because we're not just getting stuck in what's happening. We're looking for some outlets.
So, all these things that people are doing now that they weren't doing before, right? So like new ways of staying active, new ways of eating. Like how do those relate to mental health?
Well, our mind is responsive and does really well with newness, with different. It allows it to keep almost like a fresh perspective. So if you're trying something new, using parts of your mind that are engaging in a different activity. So you're grabbing the attention, and then it's keeping you healthy because you're spending your energy applying this new technique or learning this new activity. So all of that is going to help your mind because you're not just sitting with it, allowing it to just turn the wheels and go through these like almost like emotional and mental rabbit holes that
Hmm.
keep us feeling bad. So you're spending your energy wisely. In terms of eating and nutrition, well, nutrition's directly linked to mental wellness. If we're eating the right things, we have the right fuel for our bodies. But then also getting creative with that because,
Hmm.
eating healthy doesn't come natural for a lot of people. So if they're finding ways to maybe incorporate, maybe cooking a meal with their family to where they're using that in a way that's an activity, then they're also engaging the mind, but at the same time, bringing in things that have nutritional value so that they're just going to feel better. Their mind's going to get the right fuel, and it just has a domino effect on the overall on your overall wellness.
Wow. Yeah. So people that maybe, struggle with mental health that aren't able to get out and do some of the things that do help, what are some things that from home that they can do? Like if they're not able to make appointments or they're not able to do certain activities that they would naturally do, being at home, what things can they still do outside of the things we've already talked about?
They could one thing that I'm recommending and has done pretty well for some of those in those conversations I've had with people is make a list of what you can do at home. Some
Mhm.
people, it could honestly be home repairs that they've put out off. I talked to this guy that was saying, for the longest I knew I needed to paint this bedroom in my house, and I have the
Mhm.
paint there, I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah.
So now he's used this time to create a space that he's actually looking forward to using. So that could be one. Some people are using their home to do different little workouts, whether it's stretching or whether it's spending some quiet time listening to music. That's another thing that people could be doing. Um, some people are writing letters where they're actually writing out what's going on and mailing it.
Mhm.
We haven't done that in a long time.
Wow. I haven't
So
heard of that one.
it's yeah, and it's cool because it's nice to receive a letter. We haven't done it in so long, and yet I remember, just because I've been in that time where I used to not be in technology growing up because I
Mhm.
didn't grow up in the era of it, but went into it. And I remember waiting by my mailbox for my cousins to write back to me, and I'd be so excited when I got this piece of paper in the mail. So people are doing that too. So there's gardening, that's another thing people are picking up. um
Mhm.
yeah, so many different things. Having coffee outside while you're watching the sunrise in your backyard, all these little things that we have available in our home can make such a difference in how we're feeling emotionally.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I mean, I know for myself, there's so many things that have gotten done that wouldn't have gotten done if we weren't in the situation. I am not handy by any means, and I was able to accomplish putting a shed together, which is huge.
That
um,
is huge.
yeah, and and then I find myself just being really grateful for things that we've have taken for granted for so long.
Absolutely. That's something that this has done is just give us a sense of gratitude. We never really stop to think how convenient it was to be able to get in our car and go eat lunch wherever we wanted. And now
Right.
we can't wait to do that again.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, do you think even once people are allowed to, no longer stay at home, I don't know, do you think people are going to rush to going back to some of those things? I mean, there's going to be a lot of new habits that are formed that they might, carry on with. And there's a lot of things that maybe they did before that they might be a little bit more cautious to do.
Yeah. And speaking with people and kind of giving them this lens to look through, which is what are you looking forward to? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what are you getting excited about? Because that keeps us energized. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are saying, honestly, I'm just looking forward to just having better quality time with my loved ones. Others are saying, I can't wait to go out to dinner. So I think you're going to
Mm-hmm.
find a lot of different perspectives. Some people are looking at, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time in restaurants and stuff because they're just so shocked by what's happening. And then you have
Mm-hmm.
the other group of people that are saying, man, I want to have lunch with all my family at our favorite restaurant. So
Right.
we're noticing that people are obviously going to set their own boundaries and standards kind of as moving forward. But I think everybody is similar in the sense that they're just more grateful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And which leads us to the next topic, how to set boundaries to keep emotionally and mentally healthy. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, and this is very important. Because there's so much uncertainty right now, it is just the norm for us to go into this over awareness mentality where we want to know everything that's going on moment by moment. And the truth is, we're really not going to be able to do that. So getting too much of that or getting into that mindset is harmful for our mental health because it increases our our fight, flight, or freeze response. So we want to try to balance that a little bit better. And one way to do that is to be mindful of how much media and news we're taking
Mm-hmm.
in. Setting boundaries on that, maybe scheduling a time. I'll check the news at such and such time, get some information and put it away. Turning off cell phone notifications, because what happens is we get a notification, we open it, and before you know it, we've entered almost this rabbit hole where now we're connecting here and seeing what this person posted and their opinion and this person's sick and all of
Mm-hmm.
these different things, and now we're overwhelmed again. So maybe turning off notifications to where you're setting a limit of how much you're taking in. Another thing is when we're having conversations with people we care about, kind of framing what that's going to look like ahead of time. If your goal is to call your family member to ask them how they're doing, but you know that you guys don't see eye to eye on this issue, some people think this is overrated, other people think it is, we've got such different perspectives. It's being mindful of how you're engaging with that person, because if you're calling to say hello and now you've gotten into an argument, well, that wasn't an effective way to set a boundary, because you're wanting to see how they're doing, then focusing just on that, because
Yeah.
it's a situation where we're all easily rattled and we're stressed. So we have
Yeah.
to, be mindful of how we're spending our time.
Sure. So tell me, like, what would be a skillful way to set a boundary of, maybe talking with a family member that you don't have the see eye to eye on this situation, but you want to have a conversation. What would be a skillful way of setting a boundary so it doesn't go in that direction? Because I think a lot of, like you said, a lot of people are stressed, and just the smallest thing could really set somebody off.
Right, exactly. And that happens often in situations of high stress, whether it's politics, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19, it's
Mm-hmm.
there and it happens. So one thing to do is identify, be aware that that difference is there. Sometimes we forget. It's like, yes, I don't agree with so and so, but right before we pick up the phone, we don't always remember that. So remembering that we don't see eye to eye on this, but what do we see eye to eye on? Why is this person important to me? And keep that at the front of your mind. And then, what is my goal for this conversation? Why am I calling them? It's almost like when we think of a business meeting, when we're going to do business with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
we have a plan going into the conversation. We avoid topics that could deviate that. So
Mm-hmm.
because we're thinking, I have a goal here. And when it comes to family and friends, we don't always set that same thing. We kind of just go with the flow. And in situations of high stress, that could work against us, because if they say something we don't like and then we're easily triggered by it, now we're arguing with them rather than having a nice conversation. So identifying what those differences are, and then setting a plan as to why you're calling them, being aware of that. And if you notice that they're going in a way that is going to potentially lead to an argument, bringing that conversation back around, maybe asking them a question that, that could bring that stress down. Like, so how was your day today? Or, I look at what I tried. This was interesting. I actually showed my kid how to sew a button today. He didn't know that. And then now you're having a nice conversation. or
Mm-hmm.
asking them, do you have any creative ways of managing your stress? Because I'm learning some new techniques, and then finding ways to come together.
Wow. Yeah. I really love that analogy of, business, right? So I think that really helps put it into perspective for people, right? If you're getting ready to make a business call or you're going into a business meeting, you show up prepared, you kind of have an agenda of what's going to take place and you stay on that path for the most part. Um, and
Exactly.
so just reminding yourself of what that relationship looks like and what you agree on or don't, almost have some notes in your phone. That's a reminder,
Absolutely.
right? In their contact details. But and then also having the boundary of like redirecting the conversation to a more positive topic when you see it going that way, is what I hear you saying.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, we do it in business all the time. If somebody we work with says something and they get stuck,
Mm,
we find a way to help them find their way out of it. It's
mhm.
like it's normal for us to do that. So the good thing is we're already applying these skills. But when it comes to family and friends, we get a little bit more lax. And yeah, applying exactly what you said to our other relationships
Wow.
makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to tell you a little bit about what we do here at Monster VoIP. We provide businesses with phone solutions and typically help them save 30 to 50% off their current phone bill while providing them more value and more features than what they might have today. So we're talking about mental health, and we've covered some things that you can do to try to cope during the pandemic. We've talked about boundaries to help keep an emotional and mentally healthy. And then what we want to wrap it up with is talking about how to promote lasting change, right? So there's a lot of people who maybe change and start to do things that are positive and good for their mental health, but how do they keep, reinforcing that? How do they keep on that path? And I think you have some things to talk about on that topic.
Yes, definitely. And that's always the difficult part. We all want to do these
Mm-hmm.
different things, but how do we keep it long term? And it boils down to routine. First, we create habits, but in order to get there, we have to make it a routine to eventually become a part of our lifestyle. So some of the things that we're learning now is how grateful we are for everything that we have. That's a healthy thing, because when we have an attitude of gratitude, which you hear people say sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
it shifts the way that we interact with others. It shifts the way that we think about things. It's good to be grateful. So that's one thing. If we wanted to maintain that sense of gratitude, then right before going to bed, for example, maybe making a little list of what the things you're grateful for that day. That
Mm-hmm.
way, before you go to bed, it's the last thing you think about. And making it a habit, if you put a little notepad next to your bed, you're going to remember to do that. If you're wanting to get healthier, maybe working out, then creating a schedule for yourself and setting that, and going and doing it even when you don't want to, because that's how we create these lasting changes. Um, Quality time we're spending with our family because we're home with them, maintaining that even when
Mm,
this is all over. So spending that time where we put phones away and we actually just sit down and have dinner, or we play video, or we play board games like we've been doing during COVID-19. All of these different things that have actually been good for our relationships, keeping them, but it requires discipline. So
mm,
scheduling it, maybe creating a visual calendar that you put on your refrigerator where you actually get to scratch it off the list so that it's visible. Because sometimes we
mm-hmm.
put our phones away and then our reminders go away too. But if we've got it visual, then it's easier to be accountable.
Right.
And then maybe having people along with us that can help us maintain that. So if you
Mm,
are, living with someone, saying, hey, could you help me remember to do this? Could you keep me accountable? Remind me to go for the jog, or reminds me to make my gratitude list, bring other people into it, until it becomes a habit.
mm. So yeah, I love that. So what I hear you're saying is basically like taking little small actions to reinforce the bigger action, right?
Absolutely.
And then also like accountability is huge, right? So like being vocal about like, hey, I'm trying to do this. Like, can you support me in that?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's awesome. All right, awesome. Well, we're just about out of time for today. We want to thank you, Luz, again for your investment. Welcome to the Monster Chats community. Before I let you go, tell us something. Tell us how people can find you online, how they could get in touch with you if they had questions or anything like that.
Yes, people could find me on my website. It's LUZM, so Luz M Lopez therapy.com.
Mhm.
And there's information on the type of work that I do. There's some testimonies there. All my contact information is there. I am in South Florida. But yeah, that would be the best way. I'm also available on LinkedIn and different social media outlets, but my website will actually link you to all of that. So it's like this
Mhm.
one-stop shop. So that would be the best way to find me.
Awesome. Thanks again so much. It was great having you.
It was great to be here. And I want to thank you too, Colin, for reaching out to me and having this conversation about mental health. It's so important. And I think with what's going on, it's people are like, oh, yeah, that is a pretty important topic.
Yeah,
And for you to use your platform to have this conversation and help people in that way is amazing. And I appreciate you doing that.
absolutely. And if you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. We also are open to hearing your feedback. This show is for you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Monster Chats, presented by Monster VoIP, where we share the tools, methods, and best practices that business leaders use to build new connections, strengthen relationships, and impact sales in organizations of all shapes and sizes. If you have any questions from today's show and want to reach us directly, please text your question to 424-378-6966.